Hello and welcome to another Writerly Witterings with me, Michael Jex, the tea drinking author who's not got a cup of tea because it's just late in the day and I'm a bit too busy. But I was asked after last week's little video on using writer's blood in my delicious little Pineda, I was asked by someone, well, could you do a comparison of writer's blood? Whoa! Let's try that again. Hello! Welcome to another Writerly Witterings with me, Michael Jex, the tea drinking author who's not got a cup of tea. But what I have got is some comparisons. Now, last week I did a quick review of Writer's Blood, and it got quite a few comments. One was, hold on, you reviewed this some time ago and you didn't like it. And you're right, but it's grown on me. Someone else said, could you or have you thought of doing a review comparing writer's blood and ox blood? I'm just keeping an eye out there because a delivery man just arrived, but it's not from me, it's from next door. And I thought, well, a comparison, that would be quite an interesting one. I hadn't thought about that, and so I thought, maybe I should. And so I have. Now, this is quite interesting because the comment that I had was, well, there's no point doing a review really because they're just so similar. They're almost identical, so what's the point? And yes, actually, that's not an inaccurate statement. You can see here ox blood at the top, writer's blood underneath, and then just for interest's sake, I did some sera as well. Now, these are very, very similar colours. I would say that ox blood is slightly more brownish in tinge. Writer's blood is a little more reddish and so a little more sort of very dark magenta. Sera, I would say, is a little bit more pinkish than either of the other two, and has what I would call hints of grape in it. But the thing is that when you put these are just done using a what's-it, and you do get a very different impact. So, for example, if I look at the writing here, these are all done with my Pineda, all using that ink there. And this highlights one of the difficulties about trying to review different inks because there are so many variables. One is, what's the quality of the paper? Some papers will give off a different kind of tint because of the nature of the paper. So, for example, this is Tomoe River. There's writer's blood there. There's writer's blood right next to it. Now, that's using a 1.1mm stub nib from TWSBI, which is a fantastic nib because it lays down quite a lot of ink. But it looks very different, I would say, compared to, just having to put this sleeve back on my notebook, it looks very different to an extra fine nib from Pineda. As you can see from this, writer's blood writing looks much darker and browner than the actual ink swatch itself. But when I show it having been written with a 1.1mm stub, it looks remarkably similar. And that's purely because the 1.1mm stub puts down an awful lot of ink, much like a Q-tip does. This will lay down a lot of ink for the thickness of the nib, but even so, that's far less ink. when it actually sits on the paper and dries. So that's one impact, is how fat are your nibs going to be when you use them, because the fatter they are, the more any distinction will be highlighted. The other thing is, of course, as I started saying, this is white paper, this is cream. The colour of the paper will have an impact on the way that the ink looks when you look at it. Then, of course, there are other things, such as the type of surface of the paper. Some papers have an almost glossy finish, which will have an impact on the way the colour looks. Other papers will have much cheaper surface, and they tend to absorb more. You can tell that when you get feathering, when you get bleed through, when you get all of the other problems with cheap paper. And they will soak up more of the ink, and so they will produce, again, a slightly different tint, a slightly different impact. So you have an awful lot of different things to think of when you start looking at inks. Now, I quite like Oxblood. I really do rather like Writer's Blood. And as a red, I'm very fond of Cera. I think that's lovely. I will just do one other thing here. I'll show you what a real red is, because when you're looking at colours like this, you can sometimes wonder what on earth a really vibrant red will look like. So here you are. This is what I would call a thoroughly vibrant red. It's actually called Passion Red from Diamine. And you can see there the difference. I mean, this is a very pinkish red on this paper. Usually when I'm writing with it, it comes across just as a very bright red, which is absolutely perfect when you're working on a really large manuscript and you want to be able to see where you've made any editorial notes. And here I have my latest manuscript, and with this I've just been using Writer's Blood because it's enough. This is a final edit. I've gone through it several times. My collaborative author, the lady I'm writing it with, has gone through it several times. Her daughter's gone through it. She's a master's degree student studying publishing. So it's had some professional people go through it. It's now with my agent, and we hope that maybe it'll get taken up. But the sad fact is that, not sad at all, actually. The great thing is there's, for me, been very little to mark up. So just using some Writer's Blood has meant that I can see on the page of black on white, I can see where that is really very easily. But in the past, when I've been writing books with a lot of editorial requirements, that stuff has been superb. It really does jump off the page at you when you're looking at it. So, is there a massive difference between Oxblood and Writer's Blood? I would say Oxblood is much more of a brown, Writer's Blood is much more of a very deep magenta, and Cera is similar but lighter and more pink. And Passion Red is basically red. There you have it. So, if you found that interesting and you quite like these videos, do please hit the like button and the subscribe and hit the bell. And if you want to buy me a coffee, feel free. And if you really are keen on supporting an author, you can go and join my Patreon, or you could buy my books, which is always a very good idea. Fields of Glory is out now. Blood on the Sand is ready and available for you to purchase as a pre-order. And if you do so, you could also buy the third book in the series, Blood of the Innocents. I haven't got a sample of that yet because that's not quite out. But it's been a busy year. Fields of Glory came out back end of last month. At the end of this month will be Blood on the Sand. At the end of next month will be Blood of the Innocents. And then the beginning of July is going to be The Piazza Murders, which is the latest in my Art of Murder series. And then in September, Ashes of Rebellion, which is the book I've just finished editing. And then December is going to be Pilgrim's War. So all in all, I will have published 7 books this year, I think, which is why I am in a hurry and must get back to work. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope that was interesting. Thanks a lot for your patience, and let me know if you've got any questions or comments about other inks that you would like to see tested side by side with alternative inks, because that gives me a certain amount of additional time if I don't have to think up all of the ideas. You think up the ideas, give them to me, and then all I have to do is do a video. Much easier. Thanks a lot for watching. Take care of yourselves and speak to you soon.